Now, one criticism of the vegan social movement is that it's white and it's male. It is true that it's white, and there's not much we can do about that, but it's not true that it was male-dominated at the beginning. Now, there is this thing about, men in every social movement tend to take centre stage. People know the men, tend not to know the women, and that was the kind of case of the vegan social movement, but there were some very, very powerful and important women in the early years. Elsie Shrigley, possibly in particular, she, along with Donald Watson, went to the Vegetarian Society, and they asked for a non-dairy section. Can we have a non-dairy section, please? And the vegetarians said no. And that was the biggest favour that the vegetarians had ever done for veganism. So instead of just being a subsection of the Vegetarian Society, veganism went out on its own, and within a few years developed what we now think of as vegan philosophy, which was really finished. The project was finished by 1954. Dorothy Watson was Dorothy Morgan before she married Donald, and I should have put Dorothy Morgan really there. Now, she was the person who coined the word vegan along with Donald, according to Donald, at a dance in Leicester in England. This picture always reminds me of a Spike Milligan joke, which is that, I now pronounce you man and wife, and I'll leave you to figure out which is which. So those two were the ones who coined the word veganism. Kathleen Janaway was a very important figure, worked for many years for the Vegan Society, and then formed Movement for Compassionate Living because she wanted to focus on ecology, and so she split from the Vegan Society to do that. Eva Batt, my generation of vegans know Eva Batt because she wrote two very influential cookbooks, which everybody that I knew had, but she also wrote a very important pamphlet called Why Veganism. We're going to take a quote out of that. So it's criticised white and male, but the white bit is true, the male bit is not so true. So this is a summary. This is Kath Clemens. Now, it says here 1995, but this is the second edition. The first edition was 1985. And I've got the second edition, and I didn't know that this part was in the first edition, but it is. I found out recently that it is. So 85, we won't talk about, that's just after the case for animal rights was published. And so Clemens says veganism is about having a consistent approach to human rights and animal rights, ecology and world food problems. So obviously ecology, we think about environmentalism now, world food problems, food security, those kind of things. And then the only thing in terms of language is I think that activists would probably be happier if it said consistent approach to animal rights and human rights and put that the other way around. People would have been a little bit happy. This is Eva Batt again. So this is the pamphlet. It's just a little booklet called Why Veganism. And veganism is one thing and one thing only, a way of living which avoids exploitation. Exploitation was their favourite word. In the early days, the main word they used was exploitation. And they didn't use cruelty too much. No words were banned, of course, but they did say that we are liberators, we're not animal welfareists. That was a big theme of theirs. So whether it be for our fellow men, the animal population, or the soil upon which we rely for our very existence. Now that's a weird bit at the end, the soil part, but they were very concerned about the soil. Kathleen Janaway was very concerned about the soil. She featured in a 1976 documentary called Open Door, which is still on YouTube, and it's when the BBC gave its kind of auspices over to the Vegan Society to make a short film about themselves. It looks very dated, but it's still quite interesting too. There's a vegan comedian called Simon Amstel, and he used parts of it in his mockumentary, which is called Carnage. And the reason he used it is because you can't tell some of the spoof bits from some of the real bits. For example, in the real bit, they had a family called the Bland family. Right? And yeah, you think, aye, you know. So in our more kind of media savvy days, I'm sure that somebody would have said, can we just change your name for the duration of this, you know, the Bland family. So that was pretty interesting stuff. They were interested in the soil, as I said, because they were saying that, well, Leslie Cross said this, we'll meet Leslie Cross in a minute, that, you know, you need good soil, and then you get good plants, and then you get good things for everyone. And in fact, in the movement, the issue of soil came back in the 1980s. There was a very famous book by John Robbins called Diet for New America. You might be familiar with that. And he talked about the soil. Because when you think about it, there's only a few inches between us and solid rock. And we ought to look after it. And we've got a history of not looking after it at all. Without soil, we don't eat, you know, so it's as simple as that.